Like, how many people actually are just like too busy eating food in front of the telly instead of like sitting down and talking with their family and actually really enjoying the experience? Carbohydrates don't predominantly make you fat. It's if you have an excess of energy in your body, then it will get stored as fat. Protein powder, because that's 45 grams of protein right there, and then the rest is just with my meal.
If there are 3 takeaways for our audience when it comes to eating, what would they be? I'm Dr. Béatrice, PhD, and you've landed on my podcast this time of the month, your trusty sidekick to the midlife roller coaster. I chat with experts digging into legit solutions for midlife hurdles, be it health or lifestyle. Ready for the ride? Dive into this time of the month. Subscribe and catch the latest episodes on our channel. Let's own this midlife magic together. Your chapter that talks about how to eat, I think that's another struggle through midlife. It's actually a struggle period. Tell us.
I think when we think of food, we have all of these voices telling us like what we should eat with all of these restrictions, and people don't know where to turn. They don't know whether they're coming or going. Is this good? Is this bad? And so I like to pull back all of that and say, first of all, food doesn't have morality. First, nothing's good or bad. You can't cheat on food. You're not having an affair. Like food is food. Food is more than just something you put in your mouth. It's culture, it's enjoyment, it's celebration. And we've forgotten how to eat. I know we can talk about like specifically what to put in our mouth, but we've just like forgotten how to enjoy food and how to embrace it. We've forgotten how to eat as a family.
Yes.
Like, how many people actually are just like too busy eating food in front of the telly instead of like sitting down and talking with their family and actually really enjoying the experience? And so I actually don't just talk about what to eat, I talk about how to eat, because I think that the how is more important. And this comes back to behavioral change.
Yes.
This comes back to attitude, and this comes back to how we can really learn to undiet and repair our relationships with food.
So what are some of your top tips on the unlearning of, seeing food as an enemy?
Yeah, why? Why, yeah. Well, I think, first of all, diet culture exists, right? People make a lot of money from diet books, diet supplements, and, diet talk in general. And what they do is they instill fear. That's how they market. They're like, don't eat that because this will happen. They'll go around the supermarkets, again with no shirts on probably, and go, look at the ingredients. If you can't pronounce the ingredients on this, then you're going to die. And I'm like, if you looked at the ingredients of a banana, you'd absolutely...
You'd be scared.
You'd keel over, yeah. And so one of the things in the big picture of this is to try and repair all of that. And how I would say to women, especially through menopause, when they maybe don't like what's happening to their body, they're maybe not as mindful around the food they're eating because there's just too many other things going on, is to first of all get them to just sit still, be in the moment and go, can you learn to enjoy food again? Can you learn to put food in your mouth and eat it without feeling a tiny bit guilty? That's huge for a lot of people.
It is.
Like the idea of eating bread. I went out with someone the other week and we went out for dinner and she went, I really want to try bread, but I don't eat bread anymore. And I was like,
sad.
Over my dead body, bread body. Like, I just think it's really sad, right? Because she wanted it, but for some reason in the back of her mind, she had a rule, an arbitrary rule that is fed to her that bread was bad for you.
Yeah.
And so I think education's another thing. We always talk about education, re-educating people about what the body does with the food that you eat, how it breaks it down, how it fuels the body, it builds the body, it gives us energy, can actually just get rid of a whole ton of those restrictive ideas
they're
around
toxic,
eating.
And they're self-punishing.
Yes. And what happens is, I think the number's something like most women will have tried at least 17 diets in her lifetime.
Probably at puberty. I'd venture. How many teenagers start dieting?
It's even worse now. It's even worse now because of social media. They've got this expectation about how they should look. And we know that eating disorders and any type of disordered eating peaks in puberty. we're seeing a rise of that in perimenopause and menopause too. And so it sort of makes sense if you think about the hormonal side of it. And I did a call out of action to my community and just said, how many of you have struggled with some type of disordered view of food or disordered eating? And it was overwhelming. And it was because they are confused and they've been fed all of this information. Think about when we go to the supermarket, like how it used to be. I don't know if it's as bad now because you don't see the magazines, but it would be like, eat charcoal, eat grapefruit diet, look at her cellulite, isn't she gross? Look how she's failed because she's fat. And
the celebrity culture, of course, which likes to kind of perpetuate that vision of being perfect.
Thin.
And thin?
Thin is the only thing that works, yeah. And so I think, so what I like to do, to go back to the question, and I know we sort of went on a bit of a tummy tangent, but is that how can we add back to someone's life rather than restrict? And so one of the things I like to do is get women to think, what's something that I would like to include in my diet that I've previously restricted, and how can I have a healthy relationship with that food?
That's a great way to look at it. I mean, let's name some of the top things that, carbs. All carbs are bad. So let's dispel that notion.
Right, so carbohydrates come on a spectrum. Not all carbohydrates are created equal. And so carbohydrates are our primary energy source in our body. I know you've had a nutritionist on before and explained this, but carbohydrates cross the blood-brain barrier. They help fuel our brain and our body. And when you eat a carbohydrate, it breaks it down into a single sugar. It's either glucose or fructose. It's a single sugar. And our body uses that. And in menopause, women become scared of eating carbohydrates because they think carbohydrates make me fat. Carbohydrates don't predominantly make you fat, but if you eat too many of much of anything
and don't move
enough, it's if you have an excess of energy in your body, then it will get stored as fat. But if you're someone especially who likes to exercise, you need carbohydrates. If you're someone who's going through a series of cognitive issues like brain fog, depression, anxiety, your body's craving glucose during that time. And so when I look at carbohydrates, I would say to women in menopause, the best data that we know is to eat a moderate diet of complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates mean things like vegetables, fruits, legumes, grains, and even starches. Starches are your rices and your potatoes, and there's no moral judgment around that either. If you want white rice instead of brown rice, guess what? Eat the white rice. Who cares?
Yes.
Right? Just eat it. But if we have to have a hierarchy, we'd have the fruit and veg here, going down to the grains and beans with the starches, and then the simple sugars should be the ones that you don't eat in abundance. And they're called simple sugars because they don't have a high nutrient value. But your body also doesn't moralistically decide that white sugar is bad and honey is good.
Yes, that is such a misnomer. People don't understand
I'm going to make these muffins and it uses coconut sugar because I'm morally privileged and I think that this is going to be better for your body. And your body's like, no.
Yeah.
So it's things like that. Let's just tell women that if you want to make some cookies because you've decided that cookies are on the agenda and you've made that choice, stick with it and make it how you like. With brown or white sugar, it doesn't have to be because, some influencer told me that I have to use agave. This is when privilege comes into the conversation.
Let's talk about privilege.
Let's talk about privilege.
Yeah. No, we don't all have the same privilege. And how does that translate into midlife care?
Yes, so when we're talking about healthcare, we have to look at the social determinants of health. And if you were to look at the sound bites that we see on social media, they don't exist. And you've actually just touched on it then. People will say, we all have the same 24 hours in the day, we all have this and we all have that, and we absolutely do not. And the social determinants of health look at our socio-economic status. People under the poverty line will not get the same health.
No.
They look at our ethnic and diversity standpoint. Women of colour or indigenous backgrounds do not get the same care at all. They may not even get any care. And then when we look at things like access to hormone therapy. You will likely not get care if you're a woman of color compared to
It
if
won't
you're...
even be proposed.
No, it's not even there because it's assumed that your pain tolerance is higher.
Yes.
So there's lots to unpick there. And then when it comes to food, not everybody can go and buy organic food or go to Whole Foods for all of their shopping, and neither is it necessary. And so
That's the key word. Can we say that again?
Yeah. So it's not necessary to eat organic food. It's not necessary to shop at Whole Foods to be healthy at all.
I come from a mixed background, Latin American heritage. We grew up on black bean soup. It's very simple, super high in iron. It's affordable. And when I look back, I mean, this was going, I don't want to, it's a long time ago, but I would get made fun of at school for black beans. But so I find it interesting as well that there's an element of downgrading some things that are really quite simple and quite nutritious.
Yes.
And promoting sort of the made up diets or food plans, but you don't need that. You don't need that.
And also we need to take into account preference and celebrations, right? All of this comes under the food umbrella. So you may love to eat lots of meat and I may not care for meat. And one of the few places I'm going to get my protein from and my fiber is from beans.
Yep.
And they're cheap and they're affordable and they're very well studied and they lean into the Mediterranean diet. They lead into the DASH diet that we know is health promoting. And so, and also when you look at the blue zones as well, when you look at all of these regions that have these as some of their main ingredients, I think that people who talk about things as like beans being like less than, it just comes from a place of privilege. And I think that what happens is when you see these people saying we should only eat organic and we shouldn't eat processed foods, they truly don't understand the economic pressures that people are under, the time pressures that they're under, or even just their preferences, right? And so there isn't one way to skin a cat. We know that, right?
There isn't. Can we touch upon protein as
Yes.
well? Just midlife. When we talk about unlearning, or not even unlearning, but it's adapting, realizing we are not static beings.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean for a protein need in midlife?
Yeah, and so I would love to just take a bit of a step back before we talk about protein and just remind people that our bodies are going through a change, and some of those changes show up in two specific ways. Sarcopenia is something I like to talk about a lot. Sarcopenia is the loss of lean body mass. And if we just talk about that as potentially being our muscles, it does include other things. From the age of 30, at the rate of between 3 and 8%, depending on your activity level, and because of aging, we see that our muscle mass starts to decline. That's accelerated through menopause because estrogen is part of the process.
Yes.
In addition to that, our risk factor for osteoporosis doubles after menopause. Now, it doubles based on older women, but the risk is still there. And if you're not doing something like strength training or looking for bone-promoting exercises, then you're at risk, a higher risk of osteoporosis. And the way that we support both of those mechanisms, like hanging onto our muscle and bone and even building and creating new muscle, is with the building blocks of protein. And so proteins are broken down into an amino acid, and those amino acids digest, they absorb, they're utilized, and they build. And if you're doing things like, say, strength training to promote muscle growth and bone health, and you're not eating enough protein, you're not creating the stimulus for muscle protein synthesis, which is, I've got amino acid, I'm going to use it, I'm going to use it to build muscle. And so you're not getting the biggest bang for your buck. And so I think protein is one of those things that really needs a bit more emphasis, but what does that look like practically? So for most people, women going through menopause, you need to probably eat more protein than you are currently. I don't know about you, but a lot of women don't love protein.
Yeah, it's hard to pack in that protein in a day.
It is, right? So how can we do this in a reasonable way? I would say for most people, aiming for 100 grams of protein a day is pretty doable. And you can get protein from your beans even, although there's a high carbohydrate load there, it's still a source of protein if you're a vegan or more plant forward. Lean meats, dairy, even supplements like whey powder can be really helpful, and protein bars if you really want to like have a bit more protein. But what we do know is that the needs for protein increase as you age, and they increase more because of menopause. And so I would just say to women, look for it. Your body doesn't store protein, it circulates throughout the body. So try and find a little bit at every meal that you eat. Don't overthink it. Don't feel bad if you don't have it, but definitely try and make it a bit more of a priority than you usually do. And I personally struggle. I don't eat a lot of meat. I don't like chewing my food, I think. I think it's that simple. But I mean, a lot of women don't like it. So find ways that you can sort of sneak it in. So for example, I might have like scrambled eggs on toast. Love it. It's a very British thing to have. I might mix in a little bit of egg white into that.
That's a great idea.
And then I get like an extra 25 grams of protein without even like any... Don't notice. It actually makes the eggs a bit more fluffy. You know, I prefer it. So there's ways to make it easier, but I definitely would say to people, even men, like as you get older, just try and look for it and know that it's got importance. And then one of the really cool byproducts of protein is it's very satiating.
That's true.
So when you eat protein, it takes longer to digest. It's got a higher thermic effect of food, which means it burns more calories, like to just try and break it down. And so because of that, you don't get those peaks of blood sugar rushing. It sort of keeps it quite stable. So you tend not to need to snack as much. You don't get those awful like 3 o'clock drops in, you know, your energy levels. So
I'm going to tell my teen daughter to watch this segment because we tell her this. It's very hard for I don't know why, but it can be. I want to touch on supplements. You mentioned whey. And so, you know, we've talked about how there's an industry that's predator on women in midlife. But in this case, talk about where supplements and what type of supplements can help.
Yeah, and so I first of all would say that, like, you know, not every woman needs to take every supplement, and like, where do you stop? Like how you see all of these supplements and it's like, oh, I'll take these and I'll take these, and it ends up being super expensive and creating often really expensive pee, right? So how do you find what you need for you as a person? Well, there's a lot of data on a lot of supplements, and so first of all, would find out what your pain point is, right? It might be from blood work. Your doctor might just say, you know, you've got low B vitamins or low iron or low vitamin D, and you really need to supplement with those. You're better off every time finding single source supplements in that case. Find a single source magnesium glycinate, for example. Find your vitamin D3. Like, just make sure you don't buy the blended things. So first of all, you might know you've got a deficiency. The other thing is there's some general guidelines out there. Like, so vitamin D, we know, is very difficult to get from food. And when you live in a place like Canada where it gets dark, it might be good to supplement that through like the winter, autumn, fall, whichever country I'm in, and the winter months. But you may have a high risk of osteoporosis. So if you can't get the calcium from your food, maybe think about supplementing that with vitamin D and K to make it absorb. And so it's things like that I would say, if you know it's something that is going to help you, then try it. But the other thing with supplements is they take ages to work. You're talking months in a lot of cases. So don't take them and go, oh, I feel amazing. That's exactly what I needed, because chances are that's placebo effect that you're experiencing.
Yeah, we talked about placebo.
And so, like, for me personally, I don't really take anything. I'm terrible. But the two things I supplement with are protein powder, because I find that a very easy way to up my protein for the day. It's not really a supplement, it's a food source. Yeah. Mix that into my Greek yogurt for breakfast. That's 45 grams of protein right there. And then the rest is just with my meals. I take creatine. I don't take it religiously. I want to try and take it a bit more, because it's probably one of the most studied supplements that we have for health, to do with our cognitive health, our muscular endurance and performance. And for me, I exercise a lot, so it's helpful. And, you know, I just talked about creatine recently on one of my Instagram posts, how it may be helpful for menopausal women as well. And I just think that, you know, that might be something that you might want to consider taking. But then at the other stream, you've got even doctors saying everyone should be taking collagen and everybody should, and I think that how do you pass that information? What really works and what might work? What might make somebody a lot of money?
Yeah.
And what, can you
So a dose of skepticism and really, again, that's why we're trying to bring this information to our audience, because we know she's really busy. So we appreciate this sort of evidence-based approach where we focus on things that we know work.
Yeah.
And maybe the ones that are maybes, well, if you have the budget and you're curious about it, maybe consider it. But don't feel like you're missing out. I think there's that FOMO and the feeling of failure, constant feeling of failure because so-and-so's doing it, so-and-so's talking about it, and she looks amazing, so that must be why. Yeah,
she's taking collagen. It must. Her skin's wonderful. It must be because of the collagen. And you're spending $60 a month if you're taking a collagen supplement. Why not look for more protein in your food? It's cheaper, it's more readily available, and it's not privileged.
Yes.
Right? It's again down to the social determinants of health. I had a friend who went to see a naturopathic doctor, and by the end of it, she was on 120 pills a day. And it was costing her hundreds every month. And she ended up stopping, thankfully, and didn't need all of those. It's crazy. And so I would start, first of all, with your doctor as well, because not just because they're supplements, it doesn't mean they're safe as well.
That's another really important point.
Right, there may be contraindications with medication you're taking. It may be causing you to have some symptoms that, like if you take too much of something. And so, I think you need to treat them respectfully.
I like to say that everything in this universe, it's a chemical, it's a molecule. So the idea of natural is good for me is another misconception, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that. It can be dose, it could be what you're doing in combination. So again, consult with your primary caregivers.
That's the natural fallacy, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go through menopause naturally because I don't want to take drugs. Like it really is as binary as I'm only ever going to be on hormone therapy forever, right? There's got to be some gray zone in there, and knowing that every person is going to need something different.
I absolutely appreciate you bringing up gray zone because I feel we are in a very binary world, and that does not help anyone because that's not how the world operates. So thank you for bringing that point up.
Oh, I live there. That's where my world is.
Amanda, if there are 3 takeaways for our audience when it comes to eating, what would they be?
I first of all would suggest that people try really hard to lose morality around food. Just enjoy your food and try not to judge yourself.
That's a good one. Number 2?
Look for protein. Look for protein as much as humanly possible because your body really wants it as you get older and as you go through menopause.
And number 3?
Don't fear carbs. Carbs are our friends.
Carbs are our friends.
Yeah.
We like to ask our guests some fun this or that questions, and I think we're going to do it with some food.
Okay, then.
All right, so chips or chocolate?
So chips, crisps, chips, fries.
I love both, so let's go with crisps.
Crisps, being all English. So actually my favorite flavor for crisps is the new spicy tomato ketchup one from Miss Vicky's that is only available in Canada, and it's to die for, and you can I'll die on that hill, but I'd rather have that over chocolate any day.
Me too,
it's the
any
best.
Day. Okay, we're being kind to ourselves, so to pretend we never will drink again is not realistic, right?
No.
So champagne or martini?
So I actually really don't drink, but if I was to drink, I would take a champagne.
Very nice.
Yes, because I like the way it looks and it would match my dress and all of those things, yeah.
And the last one is, let me see, licorice or lollipop?
Oh, licorice, salted licorice as well. Salted licorice from the Netherlands is to die for.
Oh, you'll have to bring some to us next time.
Yes, I will, okay.
I think that we've talked about food, we've talked about belly fat, so I'd like you to come back on another episode where we talk about how to move our bodies, because really it's not one single thing, right? Whether it's hormone therapy, whether it's the food you eat, it's all a combination. We are complete women.
holistic. So let's come back and do some exercise together next time.
Oh, I'd love that. I'd love that. And I like that you say that because when you look at what you can control as a woman through menopause, there isn't very much, right? If you feel like your body's fighting against you with symptoms and mood changes, and maybe the medication you're taking is helping or not helping, there's still a ton of stuff you can do from a lifestyle perspective that has a ton of evidence behind it that's health promoting and can be part of the story about longevity, right? So I think that there's not enough emphasis put on that, and there needs to be.
Absolutely. Moving away from disease management, not that menopause is a disease, but the healthcare system is very disease focused, and moving towards wellness and prevention. So I'm looking forward to that, that visit when you come back.
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was awesome.
We're so busy that sometimes we still want to have access to some good food, but we don't have a lot of time. So Minute Rice is totally worth checking out. It's single serve rice portions, taste fantastic, and literally takes a minute in the microwave. In fact, my son loves it so much, I can't even keep these in the package. It takes less time for this to microwave than it does for me to do the shit I like segment.